Hi, I'm Martha. Welcome to my sewing studio. Today I'm going to sew a quick little top. Well, that's what I told myself, but I have a hard time doing things quickly and easily. I always make them more complicated. So we're making a sort of complicated, simple top. For my pattern, I'm using the Homer and Howell's Ingrid pattern. This makes both a little top and a dress. It's a beautifully drafted pattern. I used to live in Glasgow, Scotland, and this is a Glasgow-based brand, and I purchased this pattern at Bond Textiles, which is an amazing fabric and notions shop on the south side in Glasgow. So if you ever find yourself in Scotland, be sure to take a trip there and look out for Homer and Howell's pattern. I have a huge soft spot for Scotland. The sample used on the cover probably isn't going to read well on camera, so let me show you the line drawings. This is a beautiful little top. I love the way they've handled bust shaping. The dart has been rotated to the center front and there's sort of a tuck there. And that does all of your bust shaping. It's really lovely. And then as a dress, it has this asymmetrical skirt and two different sleeve options. One thing I like about the asymmetrical skirt is that if you wanted to, you really could choose the left side or the right side and make it symmetrical. There's just like a lot that you could do with this pattern. This is a printed pattern and I love printed patterns. I always am eager to support brands that give you a hard copy. Love my physical media. Because this is on sort of that printer weight paper, maybe a little bit lighter than printer weight paper, I have traced mine off. Also because the dress is sort of voluminous, it's a lot of paper, but if you're just making the top, you really only need the front, back, and sleeve pieces. So easy to trace those off. And then it comes with a lovely instruction booklet. It also comes with a beautiful tag. I love this tag. It's so sophisticated. I've sewn this pattern twice before, but I haven't used the tag yet. I'm saving it for a specific fabric. They have a really clear size chart. They have very clear cutting directions. And I think overall the instructions are just lovely. Very straightforward. They are illustrated, which is my personal preference, and very clearly illustrated. Let's dive in and look at my fabric. Probably 1 year ago exactly almost, I purchased a quilt top at Broomfield Antique Fair. It's a gorgeous quilt top. It was hand sewn together and it has been loved very hard. A lot of times when you find a quilt top, it sort of, was put into a cabinet and left unfinished for many years. This one I think has been laundered quite a bit. It's probably been used as like a picnic blanket, maybe a bedspread, I don't know. There's all kinds of stains, there's paint on it, and the fabric is shredded in a number of places. So I made myself a quilted coat out of it. If you've seen my other videos, I'm often wearing it here. It is my studio jacket. I've also made myself a little quilted tote bag out of a scrap of this, and I think I have just barely enough to squeeze out the top from this. Now, as I mentioned, this fabric has been very well loved. So when I was making myself the jacket, I cut around those shredded areas, which means what I have left is the most shredded. So I have this very lightweight cotton. I'm not sure what this was labeled as when I purchased it. I think probably cotton voile, cotton voile, you might say. It's super lightweight. You can see it's quite sheer. And I'm going to use this as a underlining, meaning I'm going to basically cut these together and use them as if they are one fabric together. It's not a lining, it is an underlining. It's just going under here and then they will be used as one. This is gonna do a couple of things. The design of this quilt means everything's on the bias. I'm gonna cut some pieces on the bias and some on the straight grain. The design is intended to be on the bias and I'm gonna cut both ways because that is how my pattern pieces fit on what I have available. But having things on the bias will make your garment shift around. So I will have this fabric underneath it on the straight grain. So it will stabilize my fabric. Then anywhere there's a shredded area, this will provide, some support, of course, and make sure there's not just a hole ripping through my garment. And then it also will function as a lining, encasing all these exposed raw edges of fabric. I think we're just gonna get into it. It is a rainy, rainy day. I would like to sew for a couple of hours here. So let's see how much we can get done. I wanna work quickly and efficiently today. Those are my goals. Before I cut my fabric, I'm gonna get everything set up. So I have my cotton voile and I'm going to lay the quilt pieces on top of it and just sort of carefully smooth everything together so that it can be used as one layer. Cotton loves cotton, which means it likes to stick to itself. So this is nice because the fabric will hold in place. Once I've laid everything down on the voile, it's not like a slippery satin type of situation. It's really gonna adhere to itself, and these two pieces will be easy to work with. If you're underlining like a silk chiffon with a silk charmeuse, you need to do a lot of hand basting, and luckily with this cotton, we don't need to do any of that. I have one other remnant of this quilt. that's going to be one of the sleeves. And then I know I want to use this corner as the second sleeve. And like I said, those are going to be cut on bias, which is really the straight grain of the fabric, but bias of this quilt pattern. I also think that's probably going to help the sleeve behave the way that we want it to. And then the other pieces I need to fit out of these 3 squares, and I have chosen to make the front and back out of these 3 squares because there's not very much color contrast and the sleeves have a higher contrast, and just the way the pieces were falling, I think that makes more sense. Oh, this is going to be closer than I thought. Okay, so I have the back pieces laid out and those go together really easily, and I have my sleeve here. The front is not going to be symmetrical, which I'm totally fine with, but I'm kind of struggling to fit these 2 pieces in a way that makes sense to me. Maybe... I'd like to refresh my memory on seam allowances. Here it is on the first page. I love when it's not hidden. 1 centimeter, so that's 3/8 of an inch. That's great. We're not wasting a lot of fabric. Let me think. First of all, let me write that on a piece. Here's my cutting layout. You can see that it's really tight. I don't have a lot of room to spare, and luckily I do have that 1 additional swatch that I'll be using for the other sleeve. I wanted these points on the design to match up at center front, so I marked my seam line. This is one of the many reasons I like to mark my seam lines on patterns, so that the seam line will be at this point, and I will be cutting outside of it. I've cut out all of my pieces, and let me show you the underlining. It's nice and sheer, and it locks in all those loose seam allowances and threads, and it just reinforces and stabilizes this fabric. And from now on, I'm going to treat these as one fabric. I'm not gonna act like this is a lining. These are one. So I've made all of my marks, like notches and things like that, on this side of the fabric, which is my wrong side of the fabric, if you will. This is the center front of the garment, and this has a lovely little tuck, which goes like this. I will match these 2 notches. And it's not sewn down anywhere except for basically into the seam. So this is all of your shaping for the bust, and when you have your body inside of it, you can see it sort of fills it out. It's really a sweet detail, and you can see this is on an angle, and when that's sewn, you'll have a straight line. So I am going to sew these as indicated, and then the next thing that the pattern has us do is finish all of our seam allowances. I'm going to do that on the serger using a 3-thread narrow overlock. Once I've done that, these 2 pieces of fabric are truly going to be locked together as one, so I'm excited to get through that step. Here you can see this one pinned. One thing I noticed when I was just checking in with the instructions is that this pattern has facings for the neckline and the back opening, which I have eliminated in the past because I've always made this with minimal fabric scraps, and I'm trying to just save fabric wherever I can, and that's the case here as well. So the pattern does have beautifully drafted facings, but I'm going to finish the neckline with bias binding. I'm going to have sleeves here. I can't remember what I'm going to do for the center back opening, but we'll get there when we get there. So now you can see I have the bust shaping here, so I'm going to sew that inside of the seam line, and then I will finish off my seam allowances on the serger, and then we're really going to get right into assembly, and this is going to come together very quickly. Okay, wow, I've been bumping along at breakneck speed. I actually forgot just how quickly something like this comes together. I think the thing that's probably going to take the longest is putting the bias binding at the neckline, or maybe making my sleeves, which I need to do next. I've serged down my center back seam, so the next thing to do is to sew these 2 pieces together until I have to find the marking on the pattern piece. That will leave us a nice little opening at the top of the neckline so you can get your head through. There is one issue here, which is that one of these fabrics is completely disintegrating, and when it went through the serger, it just like literally it just started falling apart. So I need to manage that a little bit, and maybe I'll make a little rouleau loop. You guys know I have a really hard time saying that. And then here's my front. It's been assembled. It's not really my cleanest work, I'm gonna be honest. Like, the pieces just were not matching up at the points, and I wanted to force it. There was part of me that was like, I can wiggle these pieces and fit them together, and then I was like, yeah, but then when I wear it, it's gonna skew, and I kind of just decided to accept the imperfection because it's already kind of chaotic, and I think it's cute anyway. So the next thing I'm going to do after I finish the back piece is sew this together at the side seams and the shoulders. And then I will finish those seam allowances on the serger all together. That was so many words starting with the letter S. It was very difficult for me to say. After I've done that, I'm gonna make the sleeve, and I'm also gonna figure out what I'm doing for this neckline treatment. I'm gonna use a bias binding, so I'm gonna root through my stash and see if I have something appropriate. All right, let's go. I went rooting around in my bias tape box, and I have decided on this classic Wrights brand bias tape, probably purchased at Joann's or similar, in this pink color. The only thing is, not that deep into this piece is a join, and I'm gonna go ahead and cut that because I hate it when there's a join like in the middle of a neckline or something like that. I'll start pinning that in just a second. I'm also going to show you where I am with the sleeves. I have stitched them together in the round and finished that seam, and I also have my rows of gathering stitches. I'm going to need to add a channel for elastic at the hem of these. I'm going to handle this after I do the neckline. Let's go ahead and apply some bias tape here. I'm going to stitch that down, trim this, and then flip it to the inside and stitch it again. You can see I finished my neckline. It looks nice and neat. And I did make myself a loop from one of my scraps. Just need to find a little button that fits through there. That'll be a sweet little closure. So up next, we're gonna set these sleeves. Actually, before I set the sleeves, I need to add an elastic channel to the bottom of them. Press this up, thread through an elastic. This will be gently gathered. All right, my sleeves have been hemmed, and I've created a little channel, and I've left an opening. I've done that to both of them, and I'm now going to insert the elastic. And as always, I put one large pin at one end as an anchor, and then I'll use a smaller safety pin to thread the elastic through the channel. That was honestly one of the least pleasant experiences I've ever had in my life of threading elastic through a channel. This fabric is really bulky and uneven. My safety pin got open. We're gonna do the second one in a different technique that I actually don't like, but I think that in this case, it's gonna be better. Personally, I like to complete my garment, all the way finish it, and then try it on, and then adjust my elastic, because you could close it up now based on a guide or an educated guess, but once you wear the garment, you can feel how comfortable it is on your bicep, and I tend to like the elastic a bit looser on my arm. Okay, cute little sleeve though. This one's done, great, whatever. For the second one, we are gonna use a different technique. Have this turned inside out. I have my seam ripper and my loop turner, my bit of elastic, and then I will want one large safety pin. So here's my opening, and about halfway from it, I still need an anchor, regardless of the technique. I don't want that to come through. So that's halfway. The reason I don't prefer this technique is now I have to sew this up here, and that will be on like the outside of the bicep. It's just like one of those things where like no one's gonna notice it but me, and I just don't like it. But obviously this is a much faster method. Also, make sure you're not twisting your elastic. As you feed it through, it's easy to get it twisted. Boom. Let's hold everything in place. And I'm gonna set the sleeves now. I'm gonna sew this in with my 1 centimeter seam allowance and then serge it. And then the only thing left to do is hem it, and I have some thoughts about how I'm going to do that without getting it too bulky. I've reached the point where I can try on my top. It's almost finished, but it's not quite there. So let's still look at it with a soft eye. I'm really pleased with it. This fabric is definitely slightly heavier weight than what I would typically use for a blouse, just because we have the voile underlining and there are a lot of seams and seam allowances within this quilt top. But I love the body that the fabric has and how it holds its shape so easily. The elastic is perfect in this arm. So I will follow the length of the elastic per my right arm. I think it's pretty obvious I would not wear this top with these pants. I do tend to wear my pants at this level. I would probably pair this with jeans. I'd like to hem this kind of cropped and boxy. I probably won't tuck this in when I wear it. I don't tuck in my current versions. I also love wearing this with overalls. Looks cute to have your puffy sleeve out of the overalls. So I'm probably gonna hem it about where I have it folded right now. Oh, and I need to pick out a button, so let's look for a cute option there. Maybe also something vintage. All right, I think I know everything that I need to do, so let's get to it. I finished the top, so I'm going to show you a few details before I try it on for you. To hem it, I simply serged the edge and pressed it up and top stitched it into place. I considered a few more complicated ways of doing this, and I wasn't sure if I wanted this serged edge here, but folding it under again would just create an amount of bulk that I did not want to deal with, and since there are serged edges inside of this garment anyway, I figured it doesn't really matter. I realized I never showed you this back opening, so let's take a closer look at that now. Since the center back seam is in 2 pieces and it's serged, I just kept those seam allowances pressed to the side and then top stitched around this opening. You can see here I have this one fabric that's really just melting away, but luckily it does have that voile underneath to support it. With a pretty classic button here. It's a little pearlescent round shank button. And then I added one of my labels. It's finished! I'm so excited to show it to you. This is definitely how I would wear this out into the world with some jeans. These are modified Lander pants that I made a few years back. I love the cropped and boxy finish. It's very comfortable. It almost has the weight of a very broken in sweatshirt. It's not like a warm garment because it is these lightweight cottons. It just has that softness and really like the coziness of a quilt, even though it's just the top. Let me put my mic down so I can move my arms more freely. As I mentioned at the start of this video, this is the 3rd time that I have sewn this pattern. It won't be the last. I really want to make the dress. I think it would be beautiful in a white eyelet, just a perfect little spring dress. I would also love to see this in like a black or dark colored silk taffeta. I think that would be a really fun holiday dress, and you wear it with like black tights and little velvet shoes. I think it would just be perfect. I'm just gonna wear this today. I have to run a bunch of errands, so I'm off. If you liked this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, tell your friends, whatever you gotta do. It really helps. I'm new here to YouTube and I'm having a lot of fun. So I will see you next week. Bye.